So everybody keeps saying it's just changing the maps, but it's not. It's not just changing the maps. What happened in Alabama right now is changing an active election in real time. People have already voted. There are people who are currently voting. So voting is ongoing. Candidates have already qualified and under one set of districts. They've raised the money, they've built campaigns, they've printed signs, they've met voters, and now all of a sudden they may have to requalify again in a time period between May 20th and May 22nd. 48 hours they have to requalify, which means I don't even know if they're going to have to pay another qualifying fee. But then they have an election in August before the November election. So we have to get voters out not only in May, but in August and then again in November. That's not a tiny adjustment. That is changing the entire election process itself. And here's what people need to understand. In 2022, Alabama voters passed a constitutional amendment to the Constitution of the state of Alabama, by the way, the longest constitution in the entire world, that says that laws relating to the conduct of a general election must go into effect 6 months before that election. At least 6 months before that election. Why? Because democracy requires stability, and voters should know what districts they're in, who represents them, who is actually running. If these voters have given time and money and energy to these candidates because they want them to represent their interests and they can no longer vote for them, that's an issue. You cannot move the goalpost halfway through the game and be like, it's normal. You can't take a quarterback that people have invested in out of the game and give it to another school and say, that's normal. And what makes this even more absurd is that the courts love citing the Purcell Principle or the Purcell Doctrine when people try to challenge unfair election laws close to an election. So this principle basically says, don't make major election changes too close to an election because it creates chaos and confusions for voters and candidates. So where is that logic now? Because reopening qualifying, redrawing districts, forcing new primaries, scrambling campaigns in the middle of an election cycle sounds exactly like what this principle warned about. This is not about politics anymore. This is about whether constitutional protections and election rules actually mean anything when the people in power decide they don't like the outcome. At some point, this behavior has to stop.